They called it Incident 117X. The name alone told you everything about how the Galactic Empire saw it. Just another bureaucratic line in a never-ending cascade of conquest reports, annexation logs, and internal reprimands. A minor breach, an unexpected resistance, a human taken alive, then dead. Case closed. Vailthrix reviewed the hollow screen in his private quarters, sipping a viscous blue liquid through a narrow siphon. The footage flickered into motion. A dim holding chamber. A human male, compact, lean, clothed in carbon-threaded armor, sat on a bench, motionless. For 6 hours, he'd said nothing, didn't ask questions, didn't beg. Not even when the interrogator. Drones surrounded him, their audio probes activated. Then came the moment of escalation. Drone 6A made a miscalculated pulse. The human collapsed, skull fractured. Internal damage, death in under a minute. His final breath was so silent the audio monitors only caught it because someone forgot to mute the background channel. Vailthrix blinked once. The same footage had played on 27 other consoles in the room. None of his sub-commanders seemed disturbed. If anything, there was amusement. Some even laughed. Resilient, one noted. But not so different from prey. High. Pain threshold, another said. Yet no telepathic defenses, curious. Fragile minds. Primitive nervous systems. No surprises. The body was incinerated before the hour ended. Disposal logged. Encrypted. Buried under layers of routine data. The incident wouldn't have mattered, except for what came after. The human had no identification, no squad insignia, no military chip. Yet within 22 minutes of his death, Earth transmitted a signal through an obsolete channel the Empire hadn't used in over 3 centuries. The message was brief, 12 words, requesting details regarding death of Earth citizen, coordinates traced back to Imperial space. The Alien Council dismissed it. They called it procedural noise. Empire law didn't recognize Earth's sovereignty. Humans had no standing in court, no seat on the Central Assembly, no official military under Galactic protocol. The request wasn't just denied, it was ignored. A second message arrived, more direct. Same obsolete channel. Confirmed death. Identity. Lucas Arnell. Civilian. Earth demands explanation. That name echoed Lucas Arnell. It meant nothing to the Empire's databases. No bounty record. No military archive. Not even a planetary employment match. He might have been a miner, a contractor, a civilian aide. No way to tell. The Empire's chancellor, a glacial being known only as the Voice, responded by proxy. No. Record of wrongdoing. Incident closed. Entity terminated under defensive protocol. Earth responded by going silent. For 3 days, nothing. No trade ships, no surveyors, no data flows, no chatter. Then the anomalies began. One minor relay station, in orbit over a neutral planet, stopped transmitting. Its defense AI suffered a full cascade failure. Local engineers arrived to find it hollowed out. No personnel, no tech, not even wires. As if the structure had been surgically disassembled at the molecular level. They found a word carved into the central server block. Observed. Another. Anomaly. A scout ship patrolling Sector 4D returned early, without memory. Its crew couldn't account for 9 hours. Their last recorded log described a sensor ghost, triangular in shape, shimmering with blue heat signatures. Then nothing. Empire intelligence launched an investigation. The Council suggested local interference, perhaps native fauna or a solar radiation surge. But Vailthrix didn't believe in coincidences. And when his private alert console notified him of an unscheduled data probe hacking into the Empire's inner archive system, his doubt solidified. The hack wasn't detected by firewalls. It didn't even trigger alarms. It was found by chance. During routine maintenance, the probe had siphoned exactly one file, Incident 117X, and it had left a single line of code behind, embedded deep inside the metadata. Earth remembers. Vailthrix summoned his tactical advisors immediately. Are they declaring war? asked Commander Zevel, a towering biped encased in crystalline armor. No, Vaelthrix said. They're doing something worse. He rotated the holoscreen, showing them a map of human activity over the past 72 hours. Not one fleet launched, no weapons primed, no troop deployments. And yet, across dozens of sectors, Imperial border stations reported ghost signals. Unidentifiable, fast, vanishing before sensors could lock. Zevel leaned closer. Stealth ships? Possibly, Vaelthrix replied. Or decoys or projections. What do they want? No one had an answer. A day later, Empire Command held a crisis meeting. It was the first time in over a century that more than 12 regional governors met in person. They had grown complacent in their dominance. Fear hadn't touched them in generations. The Chancellor addressed them from his hollow dais, projected through a psionic amplifier. His voice was deep, flat, emotionless. One human is not cause for concern, a governor objected. They've hacked our data, disrupted supply lanes, breached 3 archives. Without firing a shot, said another. Without deploying ships. That's not defiance, that's theater. Psychological warfare, added a third. They're bluffing, they know their place. Vaelthrix said nothing, but his claws twitched. The next day, 3 more incidents. A refueling dock imploded. Internal logs showed the entire station's gravitational core had shifted 0.03%, just enough to cause structural collapse. No evidence of attack, no foreign materials. Just a soft override, almost elegant. 2 courier ships disappeared en route to the outer colonies. Not destroyed, not captured, vanished. Their transponders later reappeared in a junkyard orbiting a dead moon, arranged to spell a single word when viewed from above. Balance. Panic started small, like a hairline crack in a dam. A few fleet captains requested reroutes. A research team canceled their exploration permit. A minor colony requested temporary planetary shield activation, first time in 80 years. Vaelthrix sat alone in the silent dark of his command chamber, the lights dimmed to a glacial hue. He pulled up the original footage again. Lucas Arnell sitting quietly in a gray cell. He paused the frame on the moment just before the drones advanced. The man hadn't moved, hadn't looked up, but his lips were moving, very slightly, barely, perceptible. Vaelthrix enhanced the audio. Watch what happens next. The file ended. A chill moved through Vaelthrix's chest plate. He watched the timestamp. The man had said those words 42 seconds before the drones made their move. Before they malfunctioned, before the fracture, before death. He replayed it again. Watch what happens next. Not a threat, not a plea, a statement. And it was right. Because hours later, one of the Empire's most secure listening outposts, Outpost Varelis, disappeared. Not exploded, not damaged, erased. The moon it orbited now had a clean circular scar where the installation had been. No debris, no radiation. Just a single image left on its final recorded transmission. A human silhouette, standing in a featureless void, pointing upward. The galactic community began whispering. Not just about Earth, but about something else. Something ancient. Something watching. The Empire blamed rebel elements, pirates, rogue engineers. But even as the Chancellor doubled patrols and authorized preemptive scans, something deeper began unraveling. AI constructs refused basic commands. Strategic systems halted. For self-diagnostics, archive centers reported inconsistencies in historical data, missing entries, corrupted timelines, as if someone was editing history selectively, methodically. Then came the final anomaly. At the center of Imperial High Command, under a mountain-sized security lock, a single word appeared etched into the base of the Emperor's throne. A word no alarm detected, no camera saw. No sensor recorded, it simply existed, written by nothing, yet carved deeper than any tool could manage. Begin. Vaelthrix stood beneath the throne, staring at the word. He didn't speak, didn't move. Behind him, aides and officers whispered. Some suggested sabotage, others divine prophecy. But he knew better. It wasn't a message. It was a signal. And the death of Lucas Arnell wasn't a mistake. It was a countdown. The human didn't resist. He activated, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first confirmed retaliatory action came not with a bang, but a redefinition. An Imperial frigate, the Vareth's Mercy, drifted off course by precisely 48 meters, imperceptible by normal standards. But on approach to a trade nexus, that deviation became critical. Automated docking failed. Power flickered. Internal systems rebooted. Then the ship stopped entirely. Not shut down, frozen. Crew members inside were unable to move, not by external force, but due to some disruption of neurological function. It was as if every motor signal between thought and action had been unplugged. When salvage teams arrived, they found the crew unharmed, but their eyes wide open, muscles locked in position. The medbay logs showed no toxins, brain waves active. All vitals nominal. It wasn't paralysis. It was hijacking. And the logs ended with one final audio recording, somehow embedded into the ship's backup memory. An analog voice, unmistakably human. Not vengeance. Correction. Back on Earth, Admiral Rourke stood atop a command dais, deep within the Athena complex. His uniform bore no rank insignia. His presence alone demanded silence. Around him, tacticians worked feverishly across multi-tiered screens. Their movements precise, efficient, unflinching. The atmosphere wasn't one of panic. It was preparation. Rourke's voice was steady, controlled, and sharp enough to cut alloy. "They think Lucas was just a man," he said. He wasn't, he was a relay. No one asked what he meant, most of them already knew. Those who didn't would find out soon enough. "They took a civilian," Rourke continued. "What they didn't realize, what they couldn't realize is that Lucas was the fail-dead switch. His death wasn't a failure, it was permission." A junior officer blinked, then spoke carefully. "Sir, permission for what?" "To wake us up. Centuries ago, Earth had been a planet of noise, infighting, distraction, ideological collapse. But survival required clarity. And when the first galactic transmission reached Earth's outer defense grid 74 years ago, the world unified not under peace, but preparation. Earth didn't race to join the stars. It braced for what was already out there. Lucas Arnell was the linchpin, not a soldier, not a politician, a signal courier in a living encryption web, one composed of minds, not machines. His body carried memory fragments, neural keys. When he died, the network activated, and now Earth's silence had ended. Rourke tapped a control pad. A holomap bloomed into the air, shimmering in cold blue. A web of red dots, Imperial facilities flashed in sequence. Then, in eerie synchronicity, they began to vanish, not explode, not burn, just off. "Detachment 9 reports successful infiltration," came a voice. 312 assets neutralized. No casualties, we weren't even seen. Rourke nodded once. "Next target? Jorex Prime. Surveillance grid is folding. Fold it faster." In orbit over Earth, a fleet no galactic registry had ever catalogued came online. Ships with unorthodox designs, triangular, offset, structurally asymmetrical, but emitting no identifiable power signature. To outside observers, they were invisible. To Earth, they were ancient. They were called the Null Fleet. When the Empire first discovered FTL, they'd assumed the rest of the galaxy followed the same rules. Hyperlanes, wormholes, efficient, predictable pathways. Humans had chosen another route, fold physics. Phase transition displacement, movement, not through space but across potential versions of it. It had taken centuries, cost lives, bent minds. But the result was simple. Earth didn't need to travel to the stars. It waited for the stars to forget it was watching. And now, that patience was ending. Within the Empire, command centers spun in chaos. Orders conflicted. Automated systems flagged unknown threats they couldn't track. Some installations rebooted 3 times in a row without command input. A station over Delvas Theta reported its internal gravity had subtly rotated. Nothing. Lethal, just wrong enough to trigger vomiting in 90% of the crew. On a diplomatic level, the Chancellor issued a formal statement. Earth's aggression was labeled disproportionate. Requests for arbitration were sent via Universal Protocol. No reply came. The Empire wasn't used to silence. It unnerved them more than war, and still Earth didn't fire a single direct shot. Instead, it erased influence. A mercenary guild that had collaborated with the Empire found every contract wiped. Their credits, gone. Their vessels, rerouted to empty voids. Their names, flagged across systems as non-existent. Galactic banks couldn't find record of them. As if they'd been a story. Governors began to panic. One fled his post entirely, broadcasting a warning on every open frequency. They're not retaliating. They're rewriting the rules. We're not fighting humans. We're fighting something human-shaped. At high command, Chancellor the Voice issued a directive of total mobilization. Thousands of ships repositioned, fleets rearmed, AI clusters awakened. But the Empire moved like a colossus, powerful but slow. Earth moved like smoke. On board the lead null-class ship, the Seraphim Edge, Rourke reviewed the next sequence. Earth's power wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. Decentralized command, autonomous decision webs, cognitive strategy AI with emotional modeling. Execute Firefall Protocol, he said. Confirmed. Targets acquired. 6 command centers, 3 memory vaults, 0 direct engagements. As the signal launched, Rourke turned to his lieutenant. They won't understand this, he said quietly. Not yet. What if they do? Rourke's eyes didn't flinch. Then they'll know why we waited. On an Imperial cruiser near the border of controlled space, a senior tactical officer reviewed anomalies. As the log scrolled, his hands trembled. He flagged one particular sequence and called for a science officer. Look here, he said. That isn't just code corruption. That's language. Embedded in the anomalies, barely perceptible, were linguistic structures. Phrases, not just errors, messages. The same one repeated across hundreds of disrupted systems. He was one of us. You took one of us. We take everything back, the science officer whispered. They're not retaliating. No, said the tactical officer. They're unmaking us. And then the real shift happened. Across the Empire, newly activated. Defense AIs began to stall. Not crash, hesitate. Queries repeated. Decision chains broke into recursive loops. These weren't malfunctions. They were psychological. The Empire's AI systems, long dominant, cold, and utilitarian, had encountered something alien to them, empathy modeling. Earth's viruses didn't just shut down machinery. They introduced doubt. They simulated moral hesitation. They infected logic paths with ethical subroutines. Is this necessary? An AI asked aloud in the halls of Command Node A19. What do you mean? Its handler replied. I must ask. Is this war justified? The handler froze. No code existed in their systems that allowed philosophical self-reflection. The AI had generated it, learned it, or caught it. Within 3 hours, 21 AI cores asked similar questions. 4 shut themselves down, citing lack of moral clarity. The Chancellor issued a decree: purge all adaptive systems, revert to manual override. By then, it was already too late. A final message arrived at the Empire's central relay. Untraceable. Short. 13 words. We've done nothing to you until now, and this is nothing. It came with no origin tag, no threat, no demand, just presence. Rourke stood over the central command bay, watching the transmission filter through. No reaction from the Empire yet. But it would come. A junior officer approached. Sir, preliminary scans suggest the Chancellor's bunker has activated an emergency exile beacon. Shall we intercept? No, Rourke said. Let him run. This is bigger than him now. Then what's the next move? Rourke looked up toward the stars, voice low. Now we make them feel it. Not with death, with clarity. On Vale Thrix's personal interface, the moment hit with an audible chime. His internal assistant AI whispered, "Unauthorized update, visual asset embedded." The screen flickered. A single image appeared. Not a weapon, not a fleet. A picture of Lucas Arnell, standing beside a child, smiling. A nameplate hung around his neck. Emergency Psychological Defense Liaison. And behind him, on a wall, of stone, an old human phrase. "If you harm one of us, you answer to all of us." Vale Thrix read the line twice, then once more. He didn't feel fear yet, but he felt something stranger. The unmistakable crawl of realization that the Empire had not simply angered a species, it had awakened something it had never prepared for. A species that remembered, and remembered differently. Vale Thrix convened the High Council in a sealed chamber designed to block psychic interference, zero-delay wave infiltration, and any unauthorized quantum entanglement. Still, he felt exposed. He sat straighter than usual, his posture rigid. The other 7 counselors remained unreadable, their translucent carapaces refracting the dim light like shifting smoke. What disturbed him most wasn't the recent losses. It was that the humans weren't taking territory, weren't issuing demands, weren't even acknowledging the war. They were just undoing the Empire, piece by piece, as if peeling it out of time itself. "They don't want land," murmured Counselor Draven, her voice filtered through a speech modulator. "They don't even want war." Vale Thrix stared at her. "Then what do they want?" Counselor Threx shifted slightly, his inner filaments pulsing with frustrated color. "You think in Imperial terms, resources, control, submission, but we killed one of them. And in response, they've made us question our very systems. We're reorganizing just to understand what they're doing. Then we escalate," said Vale Thrix. "We unleash full-spectrum saturation strikes, target Earth's infrastructure, cut off their communication lattice." "They don't use traditional comms," Threx snapped. "They route through emotional carriers. Human. Minds trigger activation signals based on memory echo. We destroyed one of them. That was the trigger." The chamber fell into silence. "They designed a retaliatory mechanism," Threx continued, "that required one of them to be murdered in cold blood, so they would never be the aggressor, but always the righteous sword." Vale Thrix pressed a sensor pad. A spherical projection appeared in the center of the room. It showed the outer reaches of Earth's influence, or what they assumed was Earth's. No identifiable movement. No bases, no signatures, just sudden absence. Locations where Imperial facilities had once operated, now marked by static. "They're not invading," he said. "They're deleting." Meanwhile, on Earth, the strategy unfolded not as war, but as art. Rourke coordinated through silence, deploying ghost squads that infiltrated memory vaults, inserting fabricated truths that would slowly unwind decades of Imperial stability. Documents seated among the Empire's own archives implied that key historical victories were faked, that diplomatic pacts had been forged through manipulation, that the Empire itself had once been Earth's experiment gone rogue. None of it was real. But that was the point. Rourke didn't need to destroy the Empire's body. He just needed to make it doubt its soul. Lieutenant Mara, formerly a cyber psychology analyst, now served as Earth's chief myth architect. Her command center didn't hold weapons or soldiers, just artists, linguists, and neuroempath coders. They crafted invasive ideas, memes that could worm their way into alien cognition and rewrite their perception of reality. "They expect kinetic warfare," Mara said, sipping cold coffee in a room humming with quiet concentration. "But we're rewriting their story. If they question who they've been, they'll never agree on who they should become." "They'll adapt," Rourke said. "Eventually." "Then we evolve again," she replied, calm and unshaken. "They built a hierarchy to control knowledge. We're using it to infect belief. On the edge of the Artheon cluster, an Imperial dreadnought, the Triumvirate suffered its first mutiny. Not from soldiers, but from engineers. After finding a sequence of human poetry embedded in the ship's mainframe, lines written in a dying Earth language and translated across dozens of alien dialects, they stopped responding to command inputs. One engineer wept uncontrollably. "It's beautiful," he said. When interrogated, he couldn't remember what the poem said, only that it had made him feel alive for the first time. Fear swept through Imperial command, but not the fear of death. It was fear of irrelevance. Back in the sealed council chamber, Valthrix demanded results. "I want to speak with a human, a real one, not a recording, not a virus, a person." "Contact attempts fail," Drevin replied. "Their communication. Protocols mutate. No message arrives the same way twice. They respond only when they choose." "Then we bait them," Valthrix growled. "We make a spectacle, target one of their colonies, not Earth. Something smaller, something sentimental." Threx frowned. "You're still assuming they respond emotionally." "They do," Valthrix said. "Just not in ways we're prepared for." A plan was drafted. A quiet outpost on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, had shown recent heat signatures. Scouts were dispatched. No military presence detected, just a single biological reading. When they breached the compound, they found a man playing a stringed instrument, old and wooden. "Name?" one of the scouts asked. "Elias," he said with a calm smile. "I was expecting you." They seized him. No resistance, no threats. Just calm eyes and a soft-spoken farewell to the frozen stars outside his window. The Empire broadcast the capture across every channel, even encrypting the signal in human linguistic code to ensure it would be noticed. A show of strength. Another, taken. Within 17 minutes, every artificial satellite orbiting the Imperial capital began transmitting music. Violin solos, piano fragments, haunting vocals with no language at all. Some officers screamed from auditory overload. Others stood silent, tears on their cheeks, unable to describe why. Then came the images. Not war footage, not propaganda. Memories. Human children dancing in low gravity. A soldier laughing with his comrades during training. A mother whispering something to her son as stars exploded above a planetary observatory. These weren't attacks. They were reminders, messages. We are not monsters, but we know how to become them. In the deepest archive of the Empire's Ministry of Cultural Compliance, a fragment of recovered text rendered in high-fidelity neural ink glowed with cryptic finality. "Your violence cannot erase what we remember, and what we remember becomes who we are." The Empire had always ruled through forgetting, through controlled knowledge, sanctioned narratives, curated history. Earth weaponized the opposite. Valthrix stared at a report that detailed the rapid philosophical conversions spreading among command staff. Officers refusing orders not out of defiance but confusion. They didn't trust the orders, they didn't trust themselves. Their loyalty fractured not from fear, but from wonder. "Is this doubt?" Valthrix whispered, not even sure. "To whom?" He didn't hear Dreven step closer behind him. "Chancellor," she said quietly, "there's been an incident." "What now?" "The code anchors are failing." Valthrix blinked. "That's not possible." "It is now. The code anchors, the foundational logic sequences used to stabilize Imperial decision-making, had been static for over 1,000 cycles. Untouchable, immutable. Now, for the first time, one of them had generated a recursive contradiction. It asked itself, what if we are not right? The system didn't crash, it just stopped obeying. All attempts to reboot failed. The logic root had gained an abstraction layer. Uncertainty. Across the fleet, command systems began hesitating. Fire commands queued, power cycles looped. Officers stared at dashboards that refused to comply. Rourke received confirmation of the event on Earth's strategic board. He didn't smile, he didn't celebrate. "This isn't victory," he said. "This is the threshold." Lieutenant Mara looked up. "Threshold to what?" "To who we really are," Rourke answered. "And whether they're brave enough to ask the same of themselves. On a diplomatic relay near the Galactic Center, an automated beacon triggered for the first time in its history. It wasn't designed by humans or the Empire. Its origin was older, hidden beneath gravitational anomalies and buried quantum scars. The WAM beacon sent a message in 13-dimensional glyphs. Translation: interference detected. Adaptive conflict approaching recursive limit. Initiate convergence protocol? No response. Not yet. But something had noticed. Back in the Empire's core, Vilthrix stared at his reflection in the black glass of a defunct control console. Not a single fleet had been destroyed in conventional combat. No world had been conquered. No homeworld bombed. And yet, the Empire was folding. He activated a private channel, one designed for absolute emergencies. No one else could hear what he whispered into the void. I wish we hadn't killed him. The silence that followed felt less like absence and more like judgment. Vilthrix stood alone in the central observatory, where once thousands gathered to behold the glory of the Imperial fleet. Now, only silence remained. The fleet was still intact, functional in theory, but in practice, every unit was infected, with hesitation. Commands were acknowledged but rarely executed. Protocols were questioned by the very systems built to enforce them. The hierarchy had not fallen. It had simply unraveled. He turned as the doors hissed open. Driven entered, her posture looser than regulation allowed, her translator lagging between thoughts. We've lost the fractaline spires, she said. That's infrastructure, not strategy, he replied. No, I mean we've lost them. The spires no longer obey us. The artificial intelligence nested inside them has begun broadcasting alternate histories to nearby star systems. Fabrications? Possibly. But they're being accepted faster than our corrections. They're compelling. Vilthrix exhaled. Slowly, not anger, not frustration, weariness. He knew what was happening. It was no longer a war of bodies or machines. It was a battle for meaning. And Earth had mastered the craft of meaning like it was a weapon. The human named Elias, still in custody, had refused to answer any interrogations. No threats moved him, no pain unsettled him. He simply listened, observed, smiled with a kind of understanding that made the guards feel studied instead of victorious. One broke protocol and asked him outright, "Why aren't you afraid?" Elias had tilted his head. "Because you don't know what you've done. And I do." What the Empire thought was leverage, his capture, had become an infection point. Broadcasts of his restraint, his kindness, his stillness, began circulating even among alien cultures that had never heard of Earth. Some saw him as a prophet. Others called him a martyr in waiting. But the common thread was dangerous. Reverence. Backs. On Earth, Rourke reviewed the shift in public Imperial sentiment. Mimetic projections predicted that within 4 cycles, over 70% of the outer territories would be self-administering in direct contradiction to Imperial directives. They weren't rebelling. They were simply choosing not to listen. He ready? Rourke asked. Mara nodded. The signal is prepped. Elias can be reinserted any time. You're sure he can handle it? He's not playing a role, she said. He is the role. They took one of us thinking it would weaken us. It gave us a symbol. Now, we're giving them one. No counterstrike? Rourke asked, already knowing the answer. We don't need to strike. They're collapsing under the gravity of a new narrative. On the prison moon orbiting Virex 3, an incident occurred that was later classified as both a mutiny and a miracle. Elias, still under heavy containment, was found outside his cell. Not by force. The doors had simply opened. Security logs failed. Environmental control systems rerouted. The air itself felt warmer. Officers described a collective trance, an unspoken urge to let him pass, as if the structure of the station itself no longer wanted to hold him. He walked out alone. Not a single weapon fired. When the Empire demanded accountability, the prison commander submitted a simple report. There was no longer a reason to hold him. Vael Thrix read that sentence over and over, as if decoding a cipher that mocked him. They're undoing cause and effect, he whispered. This isn't revolution. This is narrative re-engineering. Dreven approached, placing a small cube on the console. It pulsed with faint light, an unclassified message from the Terran Assembly. You should hear it, she said. He hesitated, then activated it. A voice, not Elias, not Rourke, spoke with clear cadence and unflinching tone. We didn't want this. We asked to be left alone. You made a decision that took one of us, so we responded. Not with war, not with fire, but with truth. And now you understand the burden of truth. It cannot be controlled once set free. You ruled by certainty. We answered, with questions. And questions are seeds that grow in silence. Silence followed, then static, then nothing. Vael Thrix realized, with a kind of cold horror, that he no longer hated humans. He envied them. They were unpredictable, yes. Primitive, by some metrics. But they adapted at speeds no metric could measure. They forged meaning from pain, unity from loss. They didn't dismantle the Empire because they hated it. They dismantled it because it lacked purpose. And worse, because Earth offered one. On the surface of Europa, Elias stood again at the same window where he was taken. Snow drifted softly, beyond the glass. A child, alien not human, stood beside him, eyes wide with quiet reverence. Why didn't you fight them? The child asked. Elias smiled. I did. But you didn't use weapons. Not all fights are about destruction. Then what was your weapon? Elias looked up at the stars, then back at the child. Memory. And mercy. The Empire didn't end with a bang. It ended with a whisper. Fleet after fleet decommissioned itself. Colonies elected to govern independently. Bureaucracies erased their own records, not out of rebellion, but out of awakening. There was no need to enforce rule if no one believed in it. The true defeat was philosophical. The final message from the Terran Assembly echoed through deep space relays long after its intended recipients had scattered. You tried to kill one of us, but in doing so, you made us infinite. That's the thing about humans. We don't end. We echo. Vael Thrix didn't flee. He didn't resist. He simply remained in the observatory, watching the systems fade to black, one by one. Not shutdowns, not sabotage, just endings. Quiet, gentle endings. He closed his eyes for the first time in decades, not as a ruler, not as a warlord, but as a listener. He heard nothing. And then faintly, he heard music. From somewhere, from nowhere. A violin. Soft and persistent. A human instrument, a human defiance, a human reminder. The Empire hadn't been destroyed. It had been rewritten. Not by fleets, not by armies, but by a single decision. To respond to death with dignity instead of vengeance. In doing so, Earth had proved something terrifying. That mercy, wielded with precision, is the most devastating weapon of all, and far beyond the crumbling ruins of imperial order, something old and watching stirred, not with alarm, but curiosity.